Hey friends, it's Caesar, host of the Creepy Fox Scary Stories podcast, and thanks for clicking on today's Scary Stories video. Now, real quickly before we begin, I just want to let you all know that this is going to be a collection episode of sorts. It'll feature all the exclusive stories, which of course have been shared here exclusively on the Creepy Fox podcast, and it'll be from former and also current police officers. Oh yeah, and I should probably mention that this also comes from some of you that have encountered police officers. Well, at least who you thought were police officers. We'll get more into that later on in the video. Now, if this is the first time you're joining us, and you like what you hear today, then consider hitting that subscribe button and the bell beside it. That way you'll be notified of all the future videos coming here to the channel. Also, consider joining these amazing subscribers who helped make this episode possible, and send in your scary story. You can send it in with the user submissions email which appears on screen, and also down in the video description as well. That is TCFnarrations@gmail.com. I'd love to collaborate with more of you, so that way I can bring you more of these scary stories videos. Anyway, with all that said, make sure to sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode of Scary Police Stories that I'm sure will bring you the chills. Okay, so I'm a police officer and I've been working with law enforcement for a little less than a year now. I've had the usual traffic stops and the occasional breaking up fights, but nothing where my life was on the line. This one evening I would experience one of the scariest moments of my life. Had things gone down differently, I might not be here to tell you all about it. Okay, so it was about 2 months ago and I was getting ready for work that evening. It had been raining most of the day, so I figured I would go ahead and pick up some coffee and donuts at a nearby 7-Eleven. I was actually coming back from visiting my grandma, and I still needed to get home to change. Oh yeah, before I forget to mention it, I was still in my regular car, and as I mentioned, I wasn't in uniform. I did, however, have my uniform in the back of my car, but little did I know not changing before work would cost me big time. Anyway, I pull up into the parking lot and I start making my way over to the shop. As I was about to approach the entrance, I noticed this man who was acting really suspiciously. He had a hoodie on and seemed to be stumbling around with something in his jacket. "Hey there, is everything alright?" "Yeah, it's just cold, that's why." I don't know, something didn't seem genuine with the response he gave me, but I ignored it and I proceeded to step inside the 7-Eleven. My good friend, who was the cashier, greets me as I go ahead and grab a cup of coffee. We catch up for a few minutes and I briefly mention the weird man outside. Jim then says, "Oh yeah, I've been seeing him around the past couple of nights. Never comes inside the store. He just sort of walks around outside and occasionally takes a peek through the window. Trust me, I find it odd, but there's nothing I can do about it." He had a point. After the conversation, I go to the back of the store and I grab some donuts. As I'm back here, I go ahead and pick out my favorite flavors, when suddenly I feel my phone vibrate. It was my wife, and she was calling me to wish me a good day at work. While I was on the phone, however, I can hear the chime of the doorbell opening. Suddenly, I hear somebody yelling, and I walk around the aisle to see what it is. It was the strange man who I had seen outside, and from the looks of it, the man has a knife. Okay, let me just go grab my pistol. Wait a minute, that's right, I don't have it with me. This is really bad, I tell myself. It sure was. Here I am inside a 7-Eleven with this deranged man seemingly robbing the place and acting like it's no big deal. I began to think about what I needed to do next. I could wait it out and hope he leaves, but that would be putting Jimmy at risk. We are trained to handle situations like this, and assuming things would go smoothly is definitely something out of the question. But I knew I had to act quickly. But just as I'm about to sneak up behind him, I hear a whisper. "We're scared, sir. What should we do?" I take a look next to me, and there are 2 kids who I want to say were about 12 and 10 who are looking at me. This situation had just gotten worse. Now I really needed to do something. Thankfully, there is a door for a back room, so I advise them to quietly make their way back there and lock the door. Whatever you do, don't open the door for anyone. Got it? Okay, sir. But what about you? Don't worry about me. Just be careful. They ended up leaving. Now that they were safe, I start sneaking my way down the aisle of chips and cookies. Jimmy was acting very calm the entire time and listened to what the man was telling him to do. He demanded he put all the money inside a backpack the man was carrying. Slowly, Jimmy started putting whatever he could fit into the backpack. About 30 seconds later, the man was starting to get really antsy and demanded he hurry. He then proceeds to lunge at Jimmy and manages to actually scrape his arm. He steps back in pain while a crazy man says, "If you don't hurry up, I'm going to kill you." This was my time to shine. With all of my might, I jump right at him and tackle him to the floor. Unfortunately, however, he still had the knife, and that's when I feel something stab me in my left leg. Yup, he had connected, and there was a huge wound. He tries to go for me again, and he gets my right hand, but luckily it stopped him right before he could reach my face. Jimmy joins me, and he manages to finally kick the knife out of the way. With his assistance, we managed to subdue him, and luckily for us, officers showed up about 3 minutes later. It turned out those kids from a few minutes ago used the phone in the back room to call for the police. Luckily, my partner Brian and another police officer arrived to take the man away. Needless to say, I had to go to the hospital, where I ended up requiring to get surgery. I guess if anything, I did enjoy all the extra attention I got for the following weeks. One good thing was the kind get well card I got from the kids and their family too. But in the end, I was just glad I did my part to ensure their safety. But yeah, probably one of the scariest moments of my entire police career. Oftentimes I'll listen to scary stories on YouTube, and I enjoy hearing about people's bravery, even through scary times. As a police officer myself, I know that there are many situations that officers are miles and miles away from helping. This means that some of you out there have mentioned stories in which you've had to take matters into your own hands. I applaud you for all that. Now, though this story doesn't deal with one of those situations, it does deal with a very young, brave girl that I ended up helping. So enjoy this different perspective of a story that comes from a police officer. This was around 2002 or 2003 when I was doing a typical night patrol. The evening had started off with me writing a couple of speeding tickets and just cruising around. About halfway through my shift, a buddy of mine, Officer James, joins me, and we spend a couple of hours together. At some point in time, we got a call on the radio mentioning that a little girl had called police as she was hiding in her upstairs attic from some home intruder. The girl relayed to the operator that the man had a knife and was tossing and kicking everything down below her, shouting obscenities. Having 2 young kids at the time, Officer James and I immediately jumped into action. We drive over there in a matter of minutes. When we arrived, the front door was wide open, and we can hear yelling from what sounded like a deranged man. Officer James and I head inside with our service sidearms, and were able to see a man aged in his early 30s, knocking and kicking at the door. To give you a quick layout, when you entered through the front door, you're right in front of the staircase. At the top of the staircase was where the man was kicking at a bedroom door. That's where we assumed the girl was hiding at. "Sir, you need to calm down. This is the police. Can you come downstairs and talk to us?" He turns around and reveals the large knife dispatch had mentioned. It was actually a machete, but that didn't mean the situation wasn't as critical. "Sir, drop the machete and walk down these stairs, slowly." He wasn't listening. Instead, he decides to throw the machete at both my partner and I, barely missing us by a few inches. He then proceeds to run down the stairs in some sort of zombie-like state. With quick thinking, both my partner and I step back, and we tell him to stop in place. He doesn't. Instead, he pulls out a switchblade from his pocket. I guess the machete wasn't enough. Nevertheless, Officer James and I take out our tasers, and we manage to stun him. Clearly, he was on something because he had Superman-like strength, and he immediately gets back up and tackles Officer James. As she struggled to get this maniac off of him, I get him into a proper hold, and I'm able to subdue him. Officer James ended up getting a couple of bruises, but luckily she was okay. As for the man, he's placed in handcuffs, and we put him behind our police cruiser. Once we do that, I head upstairs to check up on the girl. "Hello, my name is Officer Anderson. Don't worry, the man is gone. We're here to help you. Can you please open the door?" I can still hear the girl crying as she hadn't stopped ever since we had arrived. Eventually, I'm able to get her to open the door, and she jumps into my arms, crying. I wouldn't lie if I didn't shed a tear myself, but ultimately, I was happy that she was safe. As for how the man got inside, he managed to get in through the front door after the girl hadn't closed it and locked it properly. For the mom not being there, that was a whole other story, but I won't get into that. So parents, don't leave your kids alone. From one responsible parent to the other, just don't do it. Get a babysitter instead. Although this happened over 15 years ago, it has never been something I've been able to forget, mainly because of how quickly things escalated, and how, to be honest, I might have possibly bitten the dust, so to speak. At the time, I was 29 years old, and I was living in Wyoming with my now ex-wife, who had been working at our nearby hospital that evening. I myself was home on my own, working on a project late at night for my plain old boring office job. At around 10 p.m., my stomach started to growl, and I decided at this point it was a great idea to take a break and grab something to eat from the kitchen. I found some ramen I could warm up in the microwave, and so with a bag of some potato chips, I stood next to said microwave, and I began looking at the tiles on the wall. Not even 30 or so seconds after the ramen began to cook, I hear a loud crash come from somewhere in the house. I got so scared that my first instinct was to grab one of the kitchen knives in the sink and then walk toward the hallway to try and investigate what I had heard. Maybe that wasn't the smartest idea, because sure enough, I just so happened to have caught the glimpse of two large figures wearing ski masks entering my room, which was at the end of the hallway. Chills started to go through my whole body when for a split second, I see one of them had a gun and the other has a baseball bat. Now, I wasn't about to take on a home intruder with a knife when they had a gun, so it's at this point I'm telling myself, I need to get out of here, and fast. That's what I started to do. But before I reached the back door in the kitchen, I heard the microwave beep, which indicated my ramen was finished. Well, there was sure no way I was going to eat it now. I booked it out of my house, just as I heard the voice of one of the home intruders call out to me. I forget exactly what it was, but it was something like, "Come back here." Anyway, I jumped over my back fence toward the front yard, and at this moment, I saw one of my neighbors across the street with his cell phone up to his cheek, waving me down and telling me to come over quick. I did, and he ushers me in, right before I get a chance to explain what was going down in my house. As it just so happened, he was on the phone with 911, saying that he looked out his window and saw two suspicious individuals peeking through my windows and trying to open them. When he saw one of the masked burglars smash my window with a baseball bat, that's when he told 911 that officers needed to pick up their pace. Bear in mind, I saw one of them with a gun, and my neighbor hadn't seen this scary detail. Thus, we told the lady on the phone about the gun, and she advises us to seek shelter. Well, this made the entire situation that much more intense, as we're now instructed to shelter in the basement. There was a little window in my neighbor's basement that's at floor level with the front yard, so we watched from there as officers took position behind cover and called for backup. After 20 or so minutes, the home burglars walked out of the house unarmed with their hands up, and the nightmare that had started just a bit earlier had finally come to a peaceful ending. Well, as peaceful as could be, all things considered. Anyways, it was only until a few days later that I learned that those two burglars were actually wanted for quite a while, as they were tied in connection with a bunch of home invasions. It's just so scary to think as I look back. What if I had been asleep? Or worse off, what if it was my ex-wife who was there by herself and didn't react in time? Very scary thoughts for sure. Luckily, it's just a memory, and I can now just take the time to tell you all about it, instead of it having to happen again. Which, nothing like that has ever happened to me again. I had gotten into a really bad argument with my father, and I decided to get into my car and drive to a spot on the other side of town. That way I could try to get my mind off all that BS. This was around 11 p.m. at night, and it took place in 2014. The spot I had in mind is a shopping center that closes at 10 p.m., and when I got there, I see only a couple of cars that are scattered around, but not really anything to raise any serious alarms. I decided to park at the very back of the parking lot next to an embankment. I put some music on, rolled down my windows, and call my best friend Emmeline, who lives in Alaska. Since I am in the lower 48 and I was so many hours ahead from her, I knew she was going to answer, and I was right. I started to vent to her how life was unfair and that I hated my dad for the fact he treated me like a child, even though I was now 20 years old. And no to the people I'm sure I'll get hate from for still living at home at 20 years old. I wasn't just a lazy bum. I was going to college full time, and I also had a part-time job to help pay my college. Anyway, about 15 minutes of just talking to Emmeline and drinking an iced tea, I happened to look in my rearview mirror, and I saw that there was a van parked a few parking spaces away from me. Another thing I was able to notice, a hooded figure with their hands in their pockets as they slowly start to approach my vehicle. I don't know why, but at that moment I thought it was the police. Dumb thinking, I know, since I don't see a police vehicle, but I thought that regardless. I rolled my windows back up, and I ensured my doors were also locked, but I, for whatever stupid reason, decided not to leave. A man, from what I'm able to see, now knocks on my window and asks me to step out of the car. "Hey, open up. I'm an undercover police officer. We got reports of an escaped felon, and we are looking for him. Can you open your car? We need to check to make sure you aren't hiding him." As if I was going to be hiding a dangerous criminal. I told Emmeline to give me a minute as I put my phone down and tell the guy that nobody is in the car and it's just me. He once again tells me he's a police officer and then reaches for the door handle. Bear in mind that at this point he has not shown me any sort of badge or even documentation to prove he's a police officer. Emmeline overhears our conversation, and she reminds me through the speaker to ask him for proof of his involvement with the authorities. I now asked him to show me a badge. However, he dodges the question and now more aggressively demands I open the door. I had enough at that point. I knew he wasn't a real police officer, as none I know would do something like this. I told him I was now going to call the cops and head over to the police station, and suddenly this guy freaks out. I hear him say, "No, don't do that." And then, since I think he just said "screw it, my cover's blown," he pulls out a knife and tells me to get out now. "I'm not playing games," he says, as if the knife was somehow going to convince me to get out of my vehicle so he can do whatever awful thing he had in mind. I ended the call with Emmeline, and I sped out of that parking lot, driving straight over to the police station so I could give them a detail on the incident, including where I last seen the creep. They told me no police officers were patrolling the area and actually told us it was a good thing I arrived. It turned out that this wasn't the first time this had happened to someone. Well, it's sad to say that to this very day, I never got an answer to who that guy could have been or his status on whether or not he was actually caught. I would eventually graduate and move away to live in Arizona, from my previous home in Wyoming, of course, and nothing happened similar in that time, at least that I'm aware of. My question is, any fellow Creepy Fox listeners in the state of Wyoming ever encountered some fake cop in a dark blue minivan and asking you to let him into your car so you can check for an escaped felon? Well, I'm hoping someone out there might have some answers. Just to tell you and everyone a little bit about myself, I'm a retired police officer. I served 32 years as a state trooper, and I've really enjoyed my time. Over my career, I've had my run-ins with many bad people. Some situations have had me stumble upon gruesome sights, and others were more innocent, such as helping elderly people with their groceries. Quite an interesting career, to say the least. So, I do want to take you back to one experience I remember quite well. It was the new year of 2007, and the evening had started like any other. I arrived to work at 10 p.m., December 31st, and I was pretty much just staying around the station. At around midnight, my partner Luna arrives for the evening, as she gets there with some cookies and some coffee. She was always loved by the entire crew since she would always bake sweets. Those sweets were very good that evening. After a little bit of talking, we ended up going our separate ways and I began my usual route. The first call I received was for a dispute outside of Fairbanks. I got there, and after talking with the family, we managed to settle things down pretty nicely. Things then go quiet for the next couple of hours. Funny, considering it was the new year. There was usually a lot more activity on that evening, but luckily for me there wasn't. Eventually, I go ahead and pick up some more coffee at a nearby coffee shop, where I ended up finding my partner Luna. It was while we sat in our police cruisers talking about the new year that we hear a call over the radio. It was more or less something like this. I'll go ahead and paraphrase. Hello, we're getting reports of a 1016 in progress out near a set of woods on the outskirts of town. Be advised, we're being told there is a possible 1032. We're told by one of the neighbors that the man is a home intruder and he's armed. Be advised, he's got an innocent family member held up in there. Make sure to proceed with caution. Here's the address. 10-4, we're on our way right now. I ended up responding. Literally, the entire police force is now heading over to this house, not realizing what we were all about to get ourselves into. So, without hesitation, we make the 20-minute drive in less than 15 minutes, and we reach the abandoned road that leads to the home. This was where we saw an elderly couple who waved us down. Thank goodness you're all here. There's a man in the house up ahead, and he's got our neighbors in there. He's crazy. Please be careful. That family are really good friends of ours. I remember them saying to me as the elderly woman started to cry. Don't worry, ma'am. We're going to get them out of there, and everything is going to be all right. In reality, situations like this are an officer's worst nightmare. You could do everything right, and the crazy man could act up and do the worst. Anyway, we advise the couple to stay as far away from the property as possible, as we now radio for more help. Driving up the road, we're able to see this large old pickup truck, which we later found out belonged to the man who had broken in. Once we're finally there, we step out of our vehicles, and I get on the megaphone, and I make an announcement. Hello, this is the police department. We don't want this to go bad for anyone. Please just come out peacefully. We just want to talk. About 15 seconds later, we can see one of the windows open. We're now face to face with what looks to be like the man we were here for. Well, Luna and I suddenly jump for cover as he begins to fire into the night. Luna, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Did he hit you? Yeah, I think so, but he just grazed my shoulder. I'll be fine. Thank goodness, because had he aimed just a little bit lower, then there would have went my shoulder. About 30 seconds later, the front door opens, and two kids along with who we were guessing was the mom come running out crying. We get them behind with us, as the mother now tells us. Thank goodness. That man is crazy. We were just minding our own business until he broke in demanding our valuables. He wanted us to call you guys, saying he didn't care what happened to him. Okay, is your husband around? No, he's working as a security guard in town, but our cat's in there. Please, you have to save her. Now, I'm a huge animal lover, and the last thing I wanted was for that poor cat to get hurt. Well, the family was safe, but now we had to worry about this man who had pretty much locked himself inside their home. Luckily at this point, backup had arrived and were actually able to get the family to safety. Now it was just myself, Luna, and about 10 other police officers. Again, we were trying to handle the situation peacefully as I announced that he had to come out. We take cover once again as loud pops are once again heard. He then yells out, "I'm going to do it. I can't take it anymore. I'm tired of all this." It was clear he was troubled. Without moments waste, Luna and I make our way up to the door as the other officers distract him over the speaker. Opening the door was risky since he could decide to take us out as soon as we entered, but luckily he's distracted and he's looking out the front window. Luna and I now made our way in, and as we go down the hallway, we can see him with his back turned toward us. He had the cat with him and was holding it in his arms, but luckily he momentarily placed his pistol on the drawer next to him. I knew now we had to act quickly, so I grabbed the taser and I managed to successfully deploy it, and I subdue him. Luckily the shock was enough to send him to the ground as Luna goes for the pistol and moves it out of the way. Safe to say, the cat runs out of the bedroom, and we managed to get the man in custody. In short summary, we learned that the man was mentally ill, and on that evening, he was under the influence of heavy drugs, specifically meth. When all was said and done, we did manage to save everyone that evening. Nobody was seriously hurt, but it definitely goes down as one of the scariest evenings of my life. I was just getting out of my internship, and I was going to go to Domino's Pizza to pick up some food for my family. It's actually a weekly tradition we always look forward to. While I drove, I could see and hear a bunch of helicopters flying in the sky. I knew right away it had to be some sort of chase, as you see it's very rare to see any sort of aerial activity in my part of town. I remember laughing and saying to myself, wouldn't it be crazy if I would be on TV? I spoke too soon. When I reached the Domino's, I parked right in the front of the store and then waited for about 15 minutes as the pizza was being prepared for me. I remember there being a little TV in the lobby area, and one other man was watching it with me. Strangely enough, I got the confirmation that I had earlier suspected. It was a police chase. It had apparently started near LA County, but now it had moved to Orange County, where I was located. I recognized the freeway the car was driving on. It's the 91, and I saw the helicopter pan across some familiar buildings and businesses. Mind you, the chase wasn't too far off from where I was currently. Anyway, the man who was waiting in the lobby with me, eventually he left, meaning it was just myself and the 3 other employees. I ended up taking my eyes off the TV for a couple of minutes so I could go use the restroom. It's in there the helicopters began to grow louder alongside the police sirens. I began thinking to myself, the chase was now off the freeway, and I guess it's on the city streets? So I finished my business, washed my hands, and I can hear the sirens and rotors getting louder and louder. No way that chase would have made it this close, could it? Well, I kid you not. To this very day, I will never forget this next part. As soon as I exit the restroom, a man runs into the store and then pumps past me, which causes me to fall to the ground. I saw him run into the kitchen, which is followed by the employees screaming at the top of their lungs. Police officers stormed into the Domino's, and I just point in the direction of where the man had gone. At this point, the employees in the back had jumped over the front counter and joined me at the storefront, where police escorted us to safety. After about a minute or so, police exit the Domino's, and they have the man in handcuffs, where there are now a bunch of witnesses standing in the parking area. As it turned out, the man had stolen a vehicle in Compton and led the police on a very crazy chase. I just so happened to have witnessed the ending to it. Now, if you're wondering what was so scary about the entire thing, it's that the man had a gun in the glove compartment. Thank God he never actually took it with him into the store, because I think about it, and things could have turned out a whole lot more worse had that been the case. But anyway, I know this isn't your typical scary story, but I figured I'd share it with you guys on the Creepy Fox channel, since it is a nice break from the usual tales of creeps and stalkers. Stopping a car as a police officer can always be risky business. While 99% of the time it's because somebody's passed a red light or something silly, there's that 1% in which you're literally in danger. That is why anytime we approach a vehicle, we still always have to approach it expecting the unexpected. With that said, I want to take you back to my time when I was working up in Anchorage, Alaska. Specifically, one evening that was so scary, I honestly thought that was it. This was sometime in the early 90s, and I had gotten a call on the radio about a bank being robbed. I showed up to the bank, but of course the person responsible had gotten away. Thankfully, a description of the getaway vehicle was given to me, along with a masked man who had committed the act. He was caught on camera, but it was still difficult since we couldn't see his face. Nevertheless, fast forward a few days later and I was on patrol on the outskirts of the city. If I recall, it was around 8 or 9 p.m., and this is where I remember seeing a vehicle that matched the description of the one from the robbery described a few days prior. So I turned on my police sirens hoping they would stop, and surprisingly, they do. This, however, would be the start of my very scary ordeal. The minivan comes to a stop alongside the snowy road, and I go ahead and step out heading toward the driver's window. The driver now pulls down the window. "Good evening, sir. Do you know why I stopped you?" He sort of just stares at me like I was speaking another language, before replying with, "I don't know. I didn't do anything wrong, did I? Your vehicle matches the description of one that was involved in an armed robbery a few days ago. That's why." "Really? What a coincidence." Some more conversations are had before he starts to get quite angry at me. I decided to return to my car at this point because I was starting to get a bit uncomfortable. Plus, I decided it might be better to have backup just in case the man was armed. Well, little did I know that things were about to take a turn for the downright terrifying. I kid you not, moments after I turned my back toward this man's vehicle, I ended up hearing gunshots echo through the night. How any of those gunshots didn't hit me, I have no idea, but you bet I dove right behind my door and I took cover. "Shots fired. I repeat, shots fired. I need backup here, immediately," I ended up saying through my radio as the sound of bullets hit my police cruiser. After what seemed like an eternity but was only about 5 seconds, the gunshots go silent and I hear the sounds of tires against snow. The man now takes off and I immediately start to go after him. By this point, Alaskan state troopers and a bunch of other police officers have joined me on Alaskan Route 1. Unfortunately, we were unable to perform the pit maneuver due to the slippery roads and us being ever so close to the ocean and the cliffside. Anyone who has ever driven on Alaskan Route 1 knows exactly what I'm speaking of. After what seemed like hours, he slows his vehicle down before he abandons it at a nearby embankment. He then takes off into the Alaskan wilderness as myself and a bunch of police officers go running after him. Finally, after what started almost 2 hours ago, we are able to finally get him to surrender and put him in handcuffs. When all was said and done and we processed all the information, including the vehicle, which turned out to be stolen, and the man's identity, we were able to connect him to the robbery. He also had a bunch of outstanding warrants for assaults from the past. To say the man was dangerous was an understatement, but thankfully we were able to prevail with getting that criminal off the streets. This story of mine isn't from the perspective of a police officer, but it does involve an encounter with one, at least who I thought was one. Let me go ahead and get started with what I'm talking about. This happened in 2013 when I had gone to visit my cousins in Tijuana, Mexico. They lived quite far from the major city and were living pretty much in the middle of nowhere. Sure, there were some homes around there, but it was pretty quiet for the most part. Well, I had gone there to visit and I spent 2 weeks with the family. One evening, my cousin Jasmine and I had gone out into the city to attend a party. All in all, it was a good time, and when we left around 1 a.m., we were starting to get pretty tired. Now, driving at night out here is quite interesting to say the least. I'm originally from a small town in Colorado. Not much there, however, could prepare me for the roads out here. During the night, there's very little light, and finding your way around is quite difficult in the more desolate desert areas. Since it was about a 45-minute drive back to Jasmine's house, we had quite a bit of driving to do. After about 20 minutes, we were on a dirt road that we hadn't taken before. Jasmine had a little too much tonight and was telling me this was a shortcut to get home. I know I shouldn't have listened, but it did turn out to be faster. Well, we're now on this rural road when I noticed what looked like a police car parked on the side of the road. Here's the strange part, however. All of its lights were turned off, and it just sat there almost looking abandoned. I guess maybe there was an officer taking a nap, but I really tried to forget about it. About a minute later, I noticed red and blue siren lights in the rear view mirror. Great, we were in quite a bit of trouble, so I thought. I went ahead and pulled to the side of the road. However, as their vehicle came closer, I did notice something different. This wasn't really a police car, since it didn't have any wording or indication it was one. Also, the strobe lights were pretty cheap, almost as if they were glued onto the top of the car. But for some reason we decided to stay because we didn't want to risk getting in trouble. Soon enough, this older man comes up to the window and tells us he needed to talk. Something about him was really weird though. He looked really creepy and unprofessional. His uniform, if you really wanted to call it that, looked like the kind you could get at a costume shop. I'll go ahead and tell you the conversation in Spanish and then I'll translate it right after. Buenas noches. ¿Por acaso saben por qué les paré esta noche? No, señor. Tal vez estaba manejando muy rápido. No, eso no es. Las paré porque su luz de atrás no está trabajando bien. Necesito que salgan de su carro. In summary, for those who don't speak Spanish, he said that he had stopped us because one of the back lights was off and wasn't working. He then told us we needed to get out of the car. But why? Couldn't he have just given us a ticket and that be the end of it? Por favor, ¿puedo ver su licencia y seguranza? Sí, aquí está. Bueno, gracias. ¿Saben que ustedes dos son muy bonitas? Or in English, can I please see your license and insurance? Yeah, sure, here you go. Good, thank you. Hey, did you know the two of you are really pretty? As he said this, he had this really creepy smile on his face. I was starting to get a bit nervous now. I mean, here I am in the middle of the desert with my cousin, and this possible impersonator had stopped us. My cousin and I nervously waited by the car as he soon returns, and what happens in the next moments, we would never forget. He demands that we get into his car, where he would take us out into the desert, and as he said, show us a good time. He told us that if we went with him, he wasn't going to give us a ticket. It's obvious now, this guy wasn't really a police officer. However, we couldn't just run off. It looked as if he was armed. He ended up grabbing my cousin's arm and throws her up against the back of the vehicle. I knew at this moment I had to act quickly, so I try to get him to stop, but he pushes me, causing me to fall on a sharp rock. Jasmine is screaming at this point and telling him to stop, and luckily what happens next is what we believe ultimately saved us. We are all suddenly blinded by headlights making their way down the road. Soon, we're shocked to see an official army jeep driving down toward us. I wave them down, and the creepy man lets go of my cousin. All of a sudden, this man books it and starts to run off into the desert. The men driving in the official vehicle ended up stopping, and I tell them to go after the man. After a couple of minutes, they are able to subdue the man and arrest him. As we teased throughout my retelling, he wasn't actually a police officer. This was something the army men ended up explaining to us. I guess this area was notorious for people going missing. A lot of times bad people would pretend to be officers in order to get people to stop. Most of the time they'll rob them or just leave them out in the desert with absolutely nothing. Luckily, these wonderful men were patrolling the area when they happened to notice where we were. Safe to say, you have to make sure you're very careful when you're out in the middle of nowhere like this. Oh, and as a funny turn of events, I've actually since become a police officer. Wish me the best of luck, everyone. If I ever have any more creepy stories, I'll make sure to send some in for the creepy fox to narrate. Thanks for listening, and have a great day. This is a scary story of mine from around 2008, where I almost bit the dust, or better yet, went out in flames. Here's what I'm talking about. One night, I had a family friend's kid with me who was doing a ride-along. We're going to call him James. It was a peaceful, wonderful night, and I was showing him what it is we do. After about 20 minutes of driving around, I ended up noticing something a bit strange. In the distance, I was able to see smoke coming from a home. I was confused by this, so I started to drive over there. Getting closer revealed large flames and a few people outside. Sure enough, there was a two-story home that was on fire. Immediately, I have to go into lifesaver mode, since I had no idea if somebody might have been in there, although technically we're not supposed to go in there. We arrived and I instructed James to stay in the vehicle, as I now go outside. There was an elderly couple and a young girl outside, and she looked to be about 9 or 10 years old. When she saw me, she comes up to me crying, saying that her big sister is still in the house. Trust me, I don't even know how that works, but regardless, my worst nightmare had come true. Help, sir. My big sister is in there. Her name is Taylor, and she's still upstairs in the room. She went back to get her cat, but the door jammed. I wanted to help her, but she yelled at me to leave. Please, you have to do something. I still remember her saying something like that. Don't worry, I'm going to go and save her. I didn't even wait for the firefighters to come, even though they were already on their way. I run back to my vehicle and grab a fire extinguisher, and I run inside. Hello, Taylor. Where are you? This is the police. I'm going to get you out. At first, there was no response, but then I was vaguely able to hear yelling from upstairs. I made my way up, but I accidentally burned my hand on the metal railings of the stairs. Nonetheless, I continue on running down the hallway, all the while trying to keep my face covered with a moist towel. Again, the screaming and yelling continues, and I'm able to see the room in which the girl was at. I go for the doorknob, but it was so hot, it has me moving my hand back in pain. The only choice now was to kick the door down. There was only one problem, however. Taylor ended up shouting back and saying that the door was jammed and it wouldn't budge. What happened was the heat melted the locking mechanism, which caused the door to get stuck. Taylor, I'm going to do my best to break the door down. Stand back, okay? With all my might, I hit the door with a fire extinguisher a few times, which causes a crack to form. After a few more blows and kicks, I'm able to create a large enough opening, where I can now see Taylor as she's holding on to her pet cat. Okay, Taylor, follow me. We're going to get you out of here. Poor girl. She seemed really out of it. I think the smoke was starting to get to her. Same with me, as I was starting to have trouble breathing. Continuing forward, I now instruct her to stick closer to the ground as the smoke had gotten thicker. Quickly, we made our way downstairs and the door is within our reach. However, in that moment, a large piece of wood from the ceiling falls, completely blocking our exit. I now tried using the extinguisher, but it had run dry. Now, we need option 2, finding another exit, and fast. This heat was getting unbearable. Taylor points me to a window in the living room that we can escape through. We now made our way over, and I quickly kick down the window screen. Taylor jumps out onto the front lawn, with me following seconds later. Once outside, I can see firefighters had arrived. They now take her, and one of the firemen actually helps me to my feet as I was struggling to get up. What happens next? James, the kid, ends up describing to me. See, all of a sudden my vision went dark, and I passed out. I don't remember the next moments, but I do remember one of the firefighters helping me with an oxygen mask. In that moment, I thought about the girl, who luckily was right next to me. In the end, here's what happened. The big sister, Taylor, who was 19 years old, was babysitting her younger sister as the parents were out of town. The little girl had accidentally left the hair straightener on that whole afternoon. Finally reaching its breaking point, the straightener, which had fallen on an old worn-out carpet, had caught fire. That's when it started, and it spread quickly. Unfortunately, they were asleep when it happened, which is why it took them a while to notice what was going on. Taylor, the big sister, manages to get her sister out to safety, but she then goes to get the cat, which was still in her room. In the process of going up there, the door closed on her, which she never paid attention to. It took her a few minutes to find the cat, but as you saw, it was already too late, as the door jammed. Anyway, I got there, and that's when I saved her life. It's been quite a long time since this happened, but even through all the years, I still stay in contact with both families. The family of the girls, and the family of James. This story is a little bit different than the others, so I hope you enjoy it. I'm a police officer who has been working for a little under 3 years. I've seen my fair share of crime, and I've encountered some pretty dangerous people. This, however, would stand out from everything else. One evening, my partner and I were doing our usual patrol of the city. It's a cool September evening, and we're enjoying a cup of coffee, just sitting down and talking about football. Out of nowhere, we get a call from dispatch telling us about a possible home intruder. So we go ahead and accept the call, and we drive about 10 minutes to the outskirts of town. This area was a little bit more on the fancier side, as the houses overlooked the entire city. Anyway, we arrive and we can see the house in question. The owners were actually out of town, and it was actually the neighbors who had called us. Well, we began searching the property, but were unable to find any signs of a home intruder. We do, however, see a bunch of tracks that look to belong to bears. We determined that it was most likely just a curious bear walking around, and we leave it at that. Fast forward to the next evening. This time it was just myself, and I was driving around. For whatever reason, I decided to patrol the area near where my partner and I were at the previous evening. Wouldn't you know, it's the same neighbors calling me and telling me they heard sounds and scratching outside their home. I went ahead and made my way over, and again I do the usual search, checking the garage, home interior, and even the backyard. When I was about to head to the front of the house, however, I began to hear the sounds of an animal crying. I shined my flashlight, and sure enough, I was able to see 2 bear cubs staring right back at me. I didn't see a mama bear, so I figured I would call some local park rangers to help me out here. However, as I stepped back from talking to them, I could hear loud and heavy footsteps making their way over to me. I turned around, and there is a large bear making its way over. Now, anyone who knows bears knows how defensive they can be with their babies. Here I was, right between her and her cubs. I had to act quickly, but at the same time, I had to make sure I didn't startle her. Slowly, I started to back up, heading over to the backyard. This bear, however, wasn't having any of this. She starts walking toward me with a look of anger. Great, this was it, I told myself. Even if I did fire away, did you honestly think that would have stopped her? And besides, I really didn't want to do that, unless it was a last resort. Finally, however, She lost interest in me and she started to walk back to the bear cubs. I now sighed in relief and I made my way back to my vehicle. However, I don't think she was done with me just yet. I was on the radio calling for backup when suddenly I see her come charging toward my vehicle. She then manages to sway the car back and forth while I struggle to understand what set her off. I go ahead and start my vehicle up and I eventually drive away as she then stands up on 2 feet. That was scary, but I was concerned with the homeowners. Last thing I wanted was for them to step out of the house in curiosity and possibly get killed. Thankfully, they never did exit, as they told me they could see all the commotion from their living room window. At the end of it all, we managed to subdue them and we moved them back into the woods. So yes, that was my close encounter with a bear. The night I almost became their dinner. So this didn't happen to me while I was actually on duty or anything, but that doesn't take away from how crazy it was. For context, I'm part of a K-9 unit where I've been with my department for easily 5 years now. My partner Rex and I are pretty much like siblings, and even on our days off, we're always working. That's why one weekend, I decided to do something a little bit different. Go on a camping trip, just the two of us. A way to get some fresh air from the stresses and dangers of work. Thus, we went ahead and went camping in the Alabama wilderness, and things were going great the first day. We went camping next to a river and we saw a few others from time to time. One family in particular fell in love with Rex, and they offered him treats since they too had a German Shepherd. Later on in the second evening, we sat by the river as I had some music playing on my portable radio. I also had a campfire going with some hot dogs and s'mores. Oh, it must have been around 9 or 10 p.m., and we began to hear branches breaking and footsteps. Rex immediately perks up, but I hold him back. After all, I didn't want some family to be walking around, and Rex mistakenly go chomping on one of them. I went ahead and called out to the noises, and a man in backpacking gear steps out. He looked fairly innocent, and he ended up waving hello, before he leaves about 10 seconds later. Now, contrary to what you might think, this man wasn't involved in my creepy encounter. I just mentioned it so you can understand how Rex will react to almost anything and get very defensive. After all, he's trained to be that way. Fast forward a few hours later, Rex and I are asleep in the tent, and I suddenly got the urge to go pee. Bear in mind, I'm a girl, so doing this out in the woods is a bit awkward. Nevertheless, I crawl out of my little bed and I head over to a nearby tree to do my business. As I'm doing my thing, I began to hear noises. They sounded like whispers, if that makes sense. It did spook me a bit, and thus I start to make my way back to the tent. This is when I hear someone running up to me. Next thing I know, I'm being tackled to the ground, and I don't even get the chance to see who it is, because I call out to Rex, but I think he'd already sensed something was wrong. I can hear him growling and running toward me. Still, that didn't stop this really huge overweight man trying to pin me to the forest floor, presumably for some really bad intentions. As I was wrestling with the creep and getting a better look at him, I see he has a knife in his right hand. Before he managed to connect with me, however, Rex leaps at him like Superman. The knife falls to the ground, and I quickly grab it. Meanwhile, Rex is tearing this guy's sweater up into shreds. "Get him off of me! Get him off!" Normally, I would have just let Rex finish the job, but even so, I had some sense of common decency. Funny, considering this man was clearly wasted, and he was trying to attack me. I was able to manage to get Rex off of this stranger, and the man takes off into the woods. That was pretty much the last time I saw him. Rex and I ended up cutting our little vacation short and calling the police. We do a search, but unfortunately, nothing ever ended up coming up. Obviously, I can't know for sure what the dude's deal was and why he was out there to begin with, but I'm just glad Rex was there with me. I'm sure I would have been able to handle myself just fine with my training, but having your partner there with you sure helps in so many ways. have many stories in my time in law enforcement, but perhaps the craziest stories were the police chases, mostly because they were unpredictable. I was involved in quite a few of them, but one in particular stands out from the rest. Now, in order to protect my anonymity here, I'm not going to include my name. I will, however, let you know that this was back in the late 1990s, a week or so before Christmas, and in rural Kansas. So let me tell you what went down. I remember sitting down at a diner having some late morning breakfast, watching the little TV and talking to some of the patrons. This was a diner I often frequented, mainly because my friend owned it. It was nice, and many police officers spent their mornings and evenings there. Anyway, I'm talking to some locals, when all of a sudden I heard loud tires screech against pavement. Moments later, a woman enters the store, and she's crying, and she's hysterical. Confused, I approached her and I questioned her on why she was so upset. The conversation goes something like this. "Ma'am, you need to calm down. Tell me, what happened? Why are you crying?" "Some man. My car. Please, I have my kids' presents in there." "Okay, try to relax. Can you take it slowly for me? And try to explain what's happening. I'll save you the trouble." But in summary, she tells me that a man approaches her saying he needed her help. That's when he takes out a revolver and demands the keys to the car. He grabbed them from her hand and he took off. However, inside the car were the gifts she had bought for her kids for Christmas, which explained why she was so sad. Nevertheless, this was the first time I had to ever deal with a real-life Grinch. The woman points in the direction he headed, along with describing her Chevrolet Silverado, and I run back to my patrol vehicle. It was at this moment I took off, and I was soon on my radio. "Be advised, I'm in pursuit of an armed car thief. Any nearby officers, please check in." I got a response from a highway patrolman, and he tells me he was roughly 20 minutes away from my location. So, I was pretty much on my own. 2 to 3 minutes of driving on the highway, I was able to see a Chevrolet Silverado that matched the same description the woman had given me. I turned on my sirens, and this causes the Silverado to go from calm driving speed to one of a maniac. My best guess was after the thief thought he was a safe distance from the diner, he would drive normally as not to get anyone's attention. Nevertheless, the chase lasts for a short 6 to 7 minutes, as he eventually gets off the road and heads into some farmlands. Soon, he crashed into a small farming canal and he jumped out with his revolver. I immediately stepped out and I told him to drop the gun as he points it in my direction and fires. I hear the sounds of metal hitting the police cruiser as I'm now on the radio advising, "Shots fired." I repeat, "Shots fired." After a few seconds, I take a peek and the guy is all out of rounds. He throws the revolver toward the ground, and that's when he takes off running. I in turn follow suit as he leads me on a 30 to 45 second foot chase. Thankfully, we had stumbled onto a farm, and this is where two farmers are able to see what's happening, and they assist me with getting the guy to give up, thanks to the pump-action shotgun that one of them had. Seeing that it was 3 against 1, this criminal thought it would just be better to give up. So after what seemed like forever, I got the man into custody. Unfortunately, the car was a wreck, and all the gifts had been ruined when they went into the water. Sad, but myself and the rest of the police department decided to play Santa Claus. You see, we surprised your family with a whole bunch of gifts and a Christmas dinner to go along with it. Thus, we turned a negative experience into a positive one. As for the real-life Grinch car thief, he got what he deserved, and all was settled. So this was about 2 years ago on my day off from work. It had been raining that morning, and I had been pretty lazy to make breakfast. Thus, I decided to drive over to this really nice family-owned bakery shop that serves breakfast. It was pretty quiet during the weekdays, and when I got there were only about 3 other patrons. From the looks of it, it was a mom and her 2 kids. Nevertheless, I sat down and ordered my food, and I talked a bit with the kids. They were actually the ones who approached me. They started talking about how they wanted to be police officers when they got older, and I went ahead and returned to my car and gave them some stickers. Not really important to the story, but I mentioned this because it took place a few minutes before this scary encounter happened. So they eventually left, and I was soon enjoying my meal of scrambled eggs, bacon, hash browns, and pancakes. Thinking about it now, it really makes me hungry, to be honest. But either way, I had drank a little too much cold water, thus I quickly head over to the restroom to do my business. While I was in there, I heard loud shouting, followed by somebody saying to be quiet and give them all the money they had in the cash register. I actually had to do a double take because I was washing my hands and I thought maybe some patrons were joking. Either way, I quietly opened the restroom door and I began to walk down this little hallway. By the way, when you go down the hallway, you still have to turn the corner to see the front countertop. That's where they had some seats and the cash register. Well, when I take a peek, I can see a really tall man with his back turned. He has what looks to be like a pistol of some sort. I froze as I soon realized that this little bakery shop was being robbed. But what do? It had appeared the robber was getting impatient, and he claimed that if the cashier didn't hurry up, it was going to quite literally shoot up the place. But again, what am I supposed to do? Well, I could wait it out, or I could try to disarm him. I chose the latter because he ends up firing a warning shot toward one of the dishes, which causes it to shatter. I snuck up behind him, and I managed to smack the pistol out of his hand. Risky move, I know, but the man was unpredictable, and he was now saying he was going to kill her. As I now held the man in an armbar hold, I told the cashier girl to grab the sidearm and take it away. She was obviously nervous, and at this moment, a couple of other patrons actually walked into the store. The girl yelled, "Help him! The guy tried to rob us." It turned out that both of them were firefighters, and even though they aren't trained to deal with these sorts of situations, they helped me nonetheless. As you probably already concluded, the man is arrested, and it's later revealed that his records show he had quite a history, including previous armed robbery. But yes, the owners and the cashier praised me for what I did, but I was just doing my job. After all, when I see someone in need of help, I do what I think is right. I don't know. To my fellow officers out there who might be listening, what would you have done differently? This was actually quite recent, about 3 months ago. Myself and another officer had been out on patrol as per normal when we ended up noticing a Honda Civic that had been swerving across the 2-lane highway. Immediately we put on our lights and we managed to get the driver to stop. Now, let me tell you, this guy reeked of pure alcohol, though I couldn't actually see any signs of bottles or even empty cans. "Hey there, sir. Do you know why I stopped you this evening?" "Nah. Why did you? I didn't do anything wrong. Can't a guy drive around normally?" "Sir, I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle." I then proceeded to tell him to wait at the curbside since I could also smell other substances in the car. Now, he was being kind and cooperative, so I didn't actually cuff him. This was a rookie mistake on my part. I should have done so, but I figured since there are 2 of us, there won't be any problems. My partner goes ahead and gets on the radio while I go ahead and begin to search the car. The man now tells me, "Okay, fine, you guys caught me. I'll just show you where I have everything in the car." Well, that was easy. Guess he finally decided to cooperate, I tell myself. My partner goes ahead and heads back to the cruiser to call everything in. I go ahead and have the guy point out where I could find what he had been driving with. This was yet another big mistake. For a few seconds, I go ahead and have my back turned to this guy. Suddenly, I feel this man jump at me as his weight knocks both of us to the ground. I'm now struggling to get this man off of me as he begins taking swings. He manages to get me with a right hook, which causes me to snap back for a few seconds. By this point, my partner is rushing toward me, trying to get him off of me. In a matter of moments, I feel sharp pain right underneath my shoulder. Turns out he had a small utility knife in his pocket, which he then proceeded to use to stab me in the shoulder. My partner manages to get him off of me, and he wrestles the man off, finally getting him in handcuffs. I'll tell you, that hurt really badly. I was in shock for a couple of minutes as I started to bleed, but luckily I was able to get patched up, and I made a full recovery. Fast forward a little bit later, and it turns out that the man had a warrant and had been previously jailed in relation to drug charges and acts of violence. A scary situation for sure, as I'm almost certain he thought he might have been able to have killed his way out of that situation, though that wasn't going to happen. Since that night, I've never made a rookie mistake like that again. It was many years ago. I'm talking about the late 1990s, and I was home alone studying for some exams. Things were very quiet until about 10 p.m. when I started to hear helicopters and police sirens in the distance. I found this odd seeing as my neighborhood is relatively safe. Well, only about 5 minutes pass and the sirens have gotten extremely loud. On top of that, I can hear the helicopter more or less above my house. I decide to see what's happening, so I take a peek out the window. Sure enough, I can see a helicopter shining a spotlight around my home and my neighbors' homes as well. Some of my neighbors were also on their front porches watching. Well, I watch a vehicle come to a stop in front of my yard, and then a man steps out who looked to be armed with a weapon. He was followed by about 10 police officers and highway patrol cruisers as well. The armed man runs into my backyard as police officers then gave chase. I'm pretty much standing there in disbelief, but then I hear it. The distinct sound of my back kitchen door trying to be opened, followed by footsteps and heavy breathing. I didn't know it at the time, but an armed robber who robbed a store and stole a vehicle had led police on this very crazy chase, and now that chase had led to my neighborhood, where he was able to run into my backyard and open the back door, which I had made the mistake of leaving open. Well, unlocked, I should be more exact. Anyway, what was I supposed to do? I did the only thing I could think of. I lock myself in my room and yell over to the police officers from the upstairs window. They tell me to stay put, as I then hear a bunch of officers downstairs in the living room telling someone to drop it and get down to the floor. As you probably already guessed, I'm sitting there behind my bed, rocking back and forth, scared beyond recognition. Finally, however, after what seemed like hours, but was more like 3 minutes, I heard an officer on his speaker say, "You can come out now. We've caught him." Nervously, I look out the window and I can see a man being led to a police cruiser in handcuffs. Anyway, that was pretty much my story. I didn't get any studying done the rest of that evening, but I did get interviewed in the local news, so that was kinda cool. I'm a firefighter / paramedic in a small town. Not so small that everyone's on call, but just big enough to have 2 people on duty at all times. I'm a 27-year-old male, short but muscular. I've been called beefy, and my partner this shift was a larger, older guy. It was around 10 to 10:30 p.m. It was a slow night, so we were watching a movie. We put on House of 1,000 Corpses. If you haven't seen it, it's about this redneck family in the middle of nowhere. The sexy daughter goes out hitchhiking, and the brother shoots out the tires. She says her brother has a tow truck and can fix it. They get lured into the house and violently killed. You'd have to watch it. However, I digress. So right after the scene where the cops get killed, our tones go off for an unknown medical in a very rural area. Of course, after watching that, we're on the edge, but we have to go. My partner said, "What the hell? There's nothing on that road." And I said, "It's either a prank or some kids were trespassing somewhere and got hurt." When we get to the address, we ended up finding an abandoned farmhouse, and upon walking to the door frame, since the door wasn't there, we wanted to make sure that the scene was safe, so We stood quietly for a few seconds, and that's when we did hear a very creepy giggle and a female voice saying, "Is everything set up?" And a male voice replying, "Shh, they're here." My partner and I both turned pale white and booked it. I don't think I've ever seen an old fat guy run so fast. We got back in the ambulance, and then we sped down the road for a bit, pulled over, and asked dispatch to send the police. The police took a look around, and they found a pentagram carved into the floor, a bunch of candles, and also a knife. To this day, I don't know what would have happened, and I don't really want to know. And just passing that old dirt road, well, it just sends chills down my back. So that was the last story for today's episode. If this was the first time you joined us, then do consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. That way you'll be notified of all the future uploads coming here to the channel. Also, make sure to leave a like rating if you enjoyed it, and leave a comment telling me what you all thought. Also, if you yourself have a scary story that you'd like to share, then send it in with my user submissions email, which appears on screen on my videos, TCFnarrations@gmail.com. Now, if you're looking for more of the Creepy Fox, then check out all the other videos I got on my channel. There's so much narration content that I'm sure you're going to enjoy. I've also got some exclusive Scary Stories narration episodes. If you'd like to listen to those, then for as little as $2 a month, you can become a Creepy Fox channel member and gain access to 10 plus hours of extra additional content. I also got some cool merch which is featured down below. There's shirts, stickers, sweaters, coffee mugs, you name it. I got a lot of things that you might like, so check it out, see if you might find something on the Creepy Fox shop. Anyway, that is gonna go ahead and do it for today. Thank you so much everyone for watching today, and I'll go ahead and catch you all on the next episode. Until then, take care and have yourself an amazing day. Hey guys, it's Caesar, and thanks for reaching this part of the video. I know the majority of you guys usually tune out by now and you guys leave, and that's fine. I just wanted to do something a little bit different just because, well, I've actually been asked to do this by a few of you, so I figured, you know what, we'll just go ahead and do it for this video, see what you guys think. And that is to include the gameplay for the session I did for recording gameplay for the video. So it's about, I'd say, 15 minutes or so here at the end I wanted to leave for you guys. Let me know if you guys want to see more of this stuff. I know one of the biggest complaints I get is that I don't upload enough. It sucks because I want to upload more, but I always have to remind folks, when it comes to the scary stories kind of videos, it really depends on the subscriber submissions. For me, I mean, it's whatever. I mean, I can just take a break from uploading. I can concentrate on my IRL stuff, but for those of you who want more content, it's you're kind of stuck in the middle or of sorts. So like I said, I can let me know what you guys want. Like I can do more of these gameplay videos that are just like separate videos, and in the meantime they can just be like filler, if you will, while I wait for more stories to come. I could do vlogs, I can do some videos with my pets. I got the birds. I'm always posting videos of my bird. I'm always posting videos of my bird on Instagram. If you guys want me to post some of that stuff over here as well, I could do that. I can do some Q&A kind of things. Like I said, give me some ideas, and I'll implement them as I await more uploads. Speaking of which, I'm gonna be uploading some more of these remaster / collection episodes coming up. Definitely want to remaster a lot of the old videos. When I look back, a lot of those older videos, the sound isn't exactly the best. There's like a lot of static and stuff like that, and just the way I narrated was kind of like, it was just like meh. I think on some videos I was just trying to get through it. I'm like, I just want to upload the video, I want to get it out. But when I look back, I'm like, yeah, I could have done a better job at that. So yeah, in the meantime, I'm going to be uploading some remasters. I'm going to be re-recording those old videos, including some footage, just get something new for you guys. And like I said, I'll also actually, another one I've been asked to do. I've been wanting to do this one for a while. It's just I've been trying to figure out how to do it, and that is the cartel stories video. Unfortunately, that one got age restricted a few months ago, so I had no choice but to take it down. I haven't really had the opportunity to go back and make the edits, but I know I've seen the comments asking me to re-upload that. So give me some time. I got to figure out what it's YouTube I got to deal with at the end of the day. So I got to figure out what exactly they want. I have an idea. There was one story that really goes into some graphic detail, and I think that's probably why I got age restricted. They never tell you why exactly, but I have a general idea. So I'm gonna go ahead and look into that so I can upload that because I've been getting that requested a lot. But anyway, that's it from me. I'll go ahead and leave the rest of the gameplay for those that you want to watch it. And until next time, well, I'll see you then. Oh yeah, and I just wanted to mention really quickly, you'll notice on some of the parts, there's some parts that go mute. Those are the parts when I'm healing. As a joke, I downloaded this Katy Perry California Girls dance mod where it's like anytime you heal, it does like that meme. But because it plays the song, I can't obviously have it in the video. So I should have thought about that, but I'm like, well, I better mute it so YouTube doesn't go, hey, you can't have copyrighted music, so we gotta, copyright strike you. So that's why. Also, the gameplay is from a custom map called Left 4 Dead Contra. You can look it up on the Steam Workshop for Left 4 Dead. But yeah, let's get to the rest of the gameplay, shall we?